we talked a lot about how media change, how everything changes, how do algorithm technologies influence media. And then the most important question is, what remains now? What could we do? What is the future of media? And today we have two prominent speakers, media philosophers, thinkers, rethinkers of media, I must say, who will talk about it. Please join me in welcoming here Natalia Antelava, who is a journalist and media entrepreneur, co-founder and editor-in-chief of Coda Story, an award-winning newsroom exploring how power operates in the 21st century. She's also co-founder of ZAG, a global storytelling network that brings together journalists, artists, and thinkers to break down barriers and make sense of a fragmented world. Please welcome Natalia Antelava. And please welcome here Nataliya Gumenyuk, author and expert specializing in international affairs and human rights, who serves as the executive director of the Public Interest Journalism Lab and co-founded the Reckoning Project. Natalia has been honored with numerous global accolades, including the Free Media Award and the Reporters Without Border Award. Please, the stage is yours.
So, Natalia, I'm in a tricky situation because usually when I introduce you, it would be great to say and she's a co-founder of my favorite festival, but there is another favorite conference. So, I should say that you kind of equal in my heart. So great to combine them both in one place. And we have roughly an hour. We will have enough time for Q&A, so right away prepare. I'll start indeed about this title, more or less about the algorithm. And for those who might haven't read your writing or writing of Coda or haven't heard you in different kind of platforms, you clearly, also speak that how we shouldn't just play with those big tech platforms, and it's not like you're trying to reckon with them, find the, an agreement, because these are not exactly usually the good guys. But my initial question is, what actually we do with these big platforms who are in charge of the algorithm? Whether we find some deal, whether we create any type of the regulation, I do understand it's possible more in the European Union than probably in the US. We own them, we acquire, we create new platforms and just, leave Facebook and everything else for something we've created for ourselves as media people, bringing people there. So what is, what are ways, pathways to get out of the dependency?
I think all of the above, except we can't do any of it right now because we haven't even started asking the right questions. So I think the first thing that we need to do is to fully understand and name the world that we live in and the problems that we're dealing with. And ask the right questions. And I think, AI is such a, it's become, every conference. Actually, I want to really praise the organizers of this, of the forum for not overwhelming it with the AI conversations, because, every conversation is now completely dominated by AI, which it should be, because it is technology that's going to change everything, the way we sleep, marry, work, and so on. But I think the way we're talking about AI and algorithms is as if it's some superpower that exists on its own and poses a challenge to us and kind of, threatens us. In reality, it's none of these things. It is absolutely amazing technology that is designed by people with agendas who are hoarding power and money. And I think, we have long needed, and we have the term for them, the broligarchs. And I think it's really important to understand where, I spent the last 2 years living in Silicon Valley, and sort of like with the upfront, and it was fascinating to have kind of like up close view of the way that the larger valley like is thinking its way through the gold rush and how completely detached it is. People who are building the technology, how detached they are from the reality and the effects of that technology on the ground. So I think we need to demystify the algorithms and AI before we even start doing like anything else.
So I'll separate two questions, the platforms and AI, because, like there are also, so far, our relations with the platforms. And I'm speaking now as a media person. It's quite clear. We lived through these 10 years of romance, of, kind of marriage where you feel you were used and abused. But an AI is a bit of a different technology. So returning to the platforms. So for instance, is it possible indeed to, skip Facebook, skip X, TikTok, build own platform? Maria Ressa, our good friend in the Philippines, speaking a lot how her publication Rappler is trying to create a kind of a different space. I'm not sure whether it can work. European Union and European countries also thinking, can we be less dependent on the, American technology? Can we really regulate? So there are a very complicated discussion between the tech companies, big tech companies with the European Commission, on what we want to regulate. I remember very well when one of my colleagues was saying how she was in Dublin, where most of the headquarters of the big companies, tech companies, are based in EU. And if you go to this company where there is Google, where there is, Meta and all the others, it's a huge building, very fancy, but most of it are the lawyers who try to figure out how they need to fight the European Union to overcome the regulations. So really, if we a bit make it kind of more realistic, saying like, are particular platforms today we can skip, forget, just say, create own?
I don't think it's the right question, because we can't, like, that is the world we live in. And that's why I say, I think the first thing that we need to do is like to name things properly, to understand, and I think it is beginning. I think the optics of Zuckerberg and the tech bros in the Oval Office really help a lot of people to understand what we've been reporting on for a really long time, and not just us. Like, there are definitely outlets, but they're far between. There are very few of them who treat technology not as a tech story, but as a power story. It's a power story. And once you start thinking about it as a power story, you start covering it as a power story. I think one of the problems that we have is the fact that, tech reporting has become so siloed, like so disconnected from other types of reporting. So asking like, can we regulate them? Well, I
don't understand what's the problem in my question, because regulating is exactly a power question. It's it's a power question.
Well,
so what would be the other one?
Like, I think about it as a journalist, and I don't think it's up to me to, it's not me who is like, can we, who is we? I do not think, like, it's wonderful to see Europe stand up to the platforms. The latest is Palantir and Germany. I don't know if, you saw the news, but basically, Germany really turned down Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, and that's good to see. But we are in a deeply unequal game where the companies own, we're talking about like trillions and trillions and dollars, and they've hoarded so much power that I think we completely, as journalists, we find ourselves, I don't think regulation, like whatever attempts there are, great, but I don't think it changes the big picture. And the big picture is that we live in the world still using the same tools we used in the world we lived in before. But this one, the journalism in this digital environment, in this information ecosystem, cannot function the way that it used to. So the way we cover companies, the way we do journalism, and the way we distribute it has to be, getting off a single platform doesn't actually, I don't know, it doesn't matter. Like, it's not, like, you can get off, like, a publication can make a decision not to be on Twitter or be on Twitter. The real question, I think, is a bigger question of, like, what is the role of journalism in the world where information environment is, all propaganda, it's all fake news. Like, our entire digital information environment is built to propel lies, because men, mostly men, who are benefiting and making money on it, have built the whole business on spreading content and information that goes against basic journalistic values. That is that is the starting question.
I do think that I think that we're coming a bit from the different perspectives, because you very much in the US, you spend time in the Silicon Valley, you're based now in New York. I was just really reflecting now, like, when I'm speaking what did I mean? Like, a Ukrainian journalist, a media professional with colleagues all over the globe. And then I understood I'm speaking as a Ukrainian, which is a future member of the European Union. So I'm speaking as a member of the country, which kind of thinks that we have some hope because we might have a more powerful entity, which probably is one of the rare entities which can still, be at least as equal to those big companies, because Europe is rich, it has money, they have the market. So, for instance, compare if Ukraine would be one place, nobody in Meta or nobody in any of the companies, X, or I won't name all of them, would care about what Ukrainians think. But like, EU is quite a market for them. But then I'll probably ask you to maybe list a number of the right questions. What would be the good questions for us as a journalist to raise when we are writing and discussing and thinking about algorithms and companies?
Yeah, the questions that we are interested in and we cover are the questions that, I happen to think are the right questions. You won't be surprised to hear. And this is very much the questions of whom this technology is benefiting and how it's changing the life for us, how it's changing the concepts. Like, for example, one of the big projects that we're working on and starting is sovereignty. Like, we're doing a big series on sovereignty and how the technology and the people behind the technology, and it's really important to keep focus on essentially the oligarchs behind the companies, how it's changing the very concept of sovereignty, both for individual countries as well as like personal and individual sovereignty. Because when we do have chips in our brain that can read us, what does it mean for me as a human and my space and my sovereignty? And when the country hands over its health system to big platforms like the United Kingdom did, what does that mean? What are the consequences of its sovereignty? And I assure you, this is something that the people running these companies are thinking about really hard. I remember listening to Sam Altman, who was asked a question about how do you think AI will change geopolitics? And his answer was, do you think AI will change geopolitics? And his answer was that, I cannot predict how AI will change human life and things, but one thing that I'm absolutely certain of is that it will completely change geopolitics. Ask anyone at Stanford, where, I spend some time, or anyone in the Valley, and there is such a prevailing narrative and belief that the nation state as a thing will cease to exist in the very near future. So, and this is what they're preoccupied with. And it's really important to connect that to what's happening here. So there may be, and I know, like, and I think it is especially important to have these conversations in countries, you know, I'm Georgian, so I know what it's like to have your sovereignty threatened. It's important to have this country, you know, these conversations in places like Ukraine, with people who understand what it's like
Even
for that
more,
to be taken away.
Because yes, of course, there is a discussion when we're fighting existential war to preserve our sovereignty. But you mentioned Alex Karp and Palantir. Now we have, maybe it's not even that big enough discussion in Ukraine, because, you know, Palantir is supporting Ukraine in a different way, providing the platform. The good thing, a lot of people maybe don't know, that data which Ukraine use while using Palantir stays in Ukraine. The Palantir doesn't have much power on the data because, you know, like the crisis happened, somebody offers support, you use it, and then you maybe are not very careful about the conditions. So now we're discussing, now saying like, who were those smart people a few years ago who, by definition, insert the deal in which we have quite a strong sovereignty over what we do with Palantir, which is very surprising, which is quite unusual for me. But going to the AI, because we just discussed the algorithm. And
sorry, I have to address that. I agree that there are a ton of great examples of use even with these existing companies. Like nothing is totally black and white. You know, Facebook did bring people out into the Tahrir Square. Like that is what, like, several things can be true at the same time. But what's fundamentally changing are the rules of the game and the belief systems behind it. And like, that's where I think we are not paying, like, yes, like we can be using this and that can be good, and this tech can be good. But if you really listen carefully to what Peter Thiels and Alex Karbs and Sam Altmans of the world say, it is really not that different from what the dictators and authoritarians say, like their vision of the world towards which we're being pulled in, you know, really significant ways. And those two things can be true, and it's important to acknowledge that they can be true at the same time.
No, but that's exactly was my point. So we were trying to figure out who are those people whom we should praise for being careful and like trying to get as much as ownership of those things while being at war, while in fact building the systems in parallel, using their knowledge and their technology to build our own. So in that way, I'm quite surprised that Ukrainians like on the we are having on the 4th and 5th year of the full-scale invasion, that these things are happening. Then it's on the ideology. You just mentioned that it's worth it to listen to what Peter Thiel, says. What we understand about their ideology, because for a while some of those people in Silicon Valley, they played the role of this kind of tech bro, maybe a bit of opportunistic, working with everybody, earning money. But when you look at that, it's not about earning money. It's not just about earning money. They have a lot of money, and they do have political agenda. And Peter Thiel was the man behind, like J.D. Vance, and they do have the global political agenda. So, what should we be aware of the ideology of different people? I do understand that they are all.
It's
not the same.
It's actually quite simple, and it's, I think, especially simple for everyone in our part of the world to understand what the thinking is. Because to me, it's like very similar to the thinking of like the Novorusky, the Russian oligarchs of the 1990s. The optics are very different. There are no like Adidas suits. It's fleece, and well, they're becoming more trendy.
Why fleece? Can you explain?
Yeah,
Why
I know.
They all
I
wear
always
this
thought, my
ugly
God,
fleece?
yeah. Yeah, I know, because bad taste and oligarchs go together. We know that too. So like once you accept that as like the archetype of, as an archetype, I think you can see very easily then what tools are being used. And the important thing is not so much what they believe. The important thing is what they do. I don't know what they personally believe. The important thing is what they do. And the important thing is what the narratives that they are spending millions and millions on promoting. And these are two essential narratives. And one is that AI is great and it will solve everything. And on the other spectrum of it is AI is terrible and it's going to be the end of the world. And in fact, like, this is kind of like two ends of the same story, because both of these are narratives about inevitability. They're telling us that whatever they're creating is inevitable and will change it. And that is just not true, because nothing is inevitable and there is another story and another way. But in order to be able to figure out and imagine what that story is, we need to understand what is the story that's being told to us. And journalists are normally good at it, but with tech, with whether it's social media platforms or with AI platforms now, we get ourselves into this like bind because, you know, it has become our distribution model. It has become a cool thing that we all use. It has become convenience. It has become a reason why many of us exist. I'm very well aware that, you know, my organization wouldn't exist if I didn't have capabilities of, you know, remote work and social media and distribution. But again, like, many things can be true at the same time. So I don't know if it's really important to, it's easy to understand the ideology and there is a range. If you listen, like, I recommend you go on codastory.com and read a story about Epstein files and Epstein's obsession with blue eyes and Peter Thiel's role in that obsession. And it's terrifying because it's eugenics. And the longevity obsession that so many of us kind of like fall into, because who doesn't want to live longer? Like, and why not take supplements and exercise and do all of it? But that longevity obsession, if you really look at it and if you really listen to how they talk about it, that is an extension of eugenics. So, yeah.
So I would still ask for a couple of advice, because, you know, when I hear AI, and I'm in this regard, I'm very not anti-technology. I like to use technology, but I'm not just interested. I think that there is nothing more precious than a human contact, and there is no better and more important job in journalism rather than to go to a place and talk to a person in person. And when I hear AI, I'm like, oh my God, I'm bored by default. How not to be bored by the discussion about AI, what that should be discussion. So we're not being bored before it's even important. We get into the essence of it. What is a good discussion? What are the questions?
Look, I left the mainstream career in mainstream media and created Coda because I wanted to look at the root causes of things and not what, but the why and how. And I think there's plenty that is not boring. I also love the technology. I think it's amazing. But, you know, as like, technology is not good or bad, but and it's not neutral. Not my words, but words of one of the creators of the internet, Judy Estrin, who is a kind of a big thinker about these things, and who, you know, is one of the creators of the original internet that promised us connectivity and many, many wonderful things until it got hijacked by actually a very small group of people who got incredibly rich over this, just the way, you know, it happened in Moscow or in Ukraine or in Georgia and so on, with like a different type of character. So all of those stories are, and another thing I would say, I think, you know, sadly, like, Chris Wiley was supposed to be here, so I'm going to quote him. He couldn't come.
You need to explain who
and
that.
Christopher Wiley is the Cambridge Analytica whistleblower who, you know, revealed the scandal, the 2016 Trump election, and who is himself a data scientist. And Chris has this line that I have forgotten which one of you. Oh, yeah. He also, we did the big project together recently, a podcast about sort of the underlying, it wasn't about AI as tech. It was about sort of like it was a story about humans. That's what we should be covering, because it's like it affects people and we need to be covering how it affects people. And Chris is saying, like, it's so weird to me, like, we don't cover electricity. Like, electricity doesn't have beats, but like we have tech beats. I think we need more non-techie reporters covering AI and thinking about how to do journalism, about the way that tech is changing our societies and the way we live, relate to each other, and function. And for everyone, most people in this room, for myself, as journalists, we really need to be thinking, like, how do we continue to practice journalism in their environment that is a big wave against it? And I think there are ways, but I think these are the questions that we should be asking.
So when I looked at the pictures from Beijing, where you have President Trump and some of the world richest people all kind of coming from big tech, I couldn't use any other word but oligarchs. It's like literally oligarchs. You don't need any euphemism. But my question would be, what is your take on their views on Russia? Because we do understand some odd Elon Musk fascination with Russia, like we can discuss it. But in this regard, at one point, this is a country which tries to stop some of the platforms. They literally go offline, like they do things which are pretty weird, shutting down the mobile connection in the very, very developed tech cities like Moscow. But at the same time, they're kicking out some of the platforms. But ideologically, it might be an interesting play for them if it's interesting for Musk. What do you think? Where do they stand? Or they just don't care?
Obviously, the Valley, like, it's hard to use a collective terms because I'm sure like all of them individually have and there will be like Ukraine supporters and this and that and Musk played a role and Palantir, like all of that. But I think collectively, I don't think they give a shit about Russia. I think they will do whatever they need to do in the moment to be in the position that ensures that they continue to accumulate money and power. Like, that's their take on Russia. That's their take on everything. I think the anti-Chinese sentiment is much more real, which makes, which is dangerous geopolitically for our part of the world. Because I think that's what, China is the reason why so many in the West are terrified of the Russian collapse. So China is like in a little bit of a different bucket, but I think otherwise, because China threatens their money and power, but Russia doesn't, and Saudi Arabia doesn't, and none of them do. They don't care. They'll cozy up to Trump and they'll cozy up to the next democratic president that will come to power. They're not ideological. They're playing a different game.
I'll ask the question, but I don't want to be a spoiler. Is there anybody who watched The Devil Wears Prada 2? Is anybody afraid of a spoiler? Okay, I'll do that then. So basically, I was fascinating because I was in New York and I visited the Atlantic magazine headquarters, and one should understand that Atlantic magazine is owned by Lorraine Jobs. Lorraine Jobs, the widow of Steve Jobs, a very powerful philanthrope who literally funded the publication, and they hired a lot of Washington Post journalists, which are laid off by Jeff Bezos, but another tech bro. So when I was watching that, I thought like, oh, okay, it's quite an interesting model. There is a big guy who is kind of bad for the media, but there is a nice former wife who kind of saves another publication, which if you really discuss it, you really understand that it was not an invention. You kind of can guess that, the script writers of the film, they know what they're speaking. It's not exactly the fiction. So meantime, do you really see that it is kind of our reality. There would be the other philanthropes in the broken media model where companies losing money, that there would be this type of the philanthropes who will maybe acquire media, let them work.
Yeah, I think there is a backlash that is just beginning, and I think there are many divorcees. You know, it's not just Laurene Powell Jobs. It's Mackenzie Scott and Gates's ex-wife, Belinda Gates, and there is a whole thing, kind of cool. I don't think they alone can, you know, nothing can happen. Like, there is no single solution to any of this. I think a lot of things need to happen at the same time, and I think these things will start happening once, like, we fully realize and accept and change the narratives around tech. This is why, like, going back to your earlier question, you know, I don't think like EU regulation, okay, great, but it's not there is no like the solution, right? But the backlash and like kind of the populist sentiment and the young people being very suspicious of AI and so on, I think there are things that are like causing what basically essentially is a little bit of it feels like a little bit of a wake-up call. Whether it's going to be too late or not, I don't know, because you know, the technology is changing every day, and it's incredible, and the takeover of our lives is very real.
I'll either rephrase or quote you when you're saying that it's a very bad time for the media, but very good time for journalism, which I agree. And I want you a bit to tell to this audience also your experience, because you can uncover a bit that you're going to launch a bit different publication also. And for me, it's interesting what that would be and where to take the courage to come from something which is proven, which is mainstream, which is kind of everybody does, and it's our model of, I don't know, running a big newsroom, to something which can be considered niche. I'm for a while, you know, I've been running Hromadske, for instance, for quite some time, and I couldn't be more proud. And actually, I was coming, and there would be, I don't know, even the donors saying like, oh, there is 1+1, this bigger media company. It'll be great if your report would be at that kind of like platform. And I'm said like, I'm proud for what I do. I used to work for major Ukrainian TV stations. And that's exactly why I left them. That's exactly why I'm better go to do a good niche thing than to stay in that kind of like popular thing where don't believe, which is like helpful and where I can do a good journalism. But I still saw a lot of people in the media, in the analytical circles, also among the donors, who has this like fascination with the big companies, legacy companies, and still look like, oh, niche, you know, like you kind of niche. How you know, deal with that challenge? How you also, you know,
yeah, I don't deal with that challenge because I don't think of it as a challenge. You know, what really keeps me up, like I was thinking about some of the things that Peter said today, and a lot of it as like
speaking about Peter
Pomerantsev in the morning session, and a ton of it I really agree with. Where I really disagree with him is that he kind of said journalists just need to keep doing their jobs, and I think it's no longer enough. Like what we used to do, I agree with him in principle, but we need to refine what the job is, because doing the job the way we used to do it is no longer enough. So I think, you know, because essentially what's happening is that we are just like putting drinking water into pipes full of sewage and thinking that it will purify everything, and it won't. So what keeps me up at night is trying to figure out, like, how do I get to practice the profession that I love and believe in, and that I got into because I really believe that journalism, you know, helps people orient themselves and navigate their lives. So how do I continue doing that in this information environment? Increasingly, I believe that again, no single answer. For us, we're like, and I think actually part of any answer should be, I think journalism will become like really much more relational. So I think we need to build relationships in ways that we haven't before. I've also, we do it through events, and there's a real hunger for them, and that's like the flip side of AI. But it's more than that. Like, we need to figure out how we can make, like, we need to rethink like the journalistic artifact. Like, what is the base? Like, the article used to be like the basic artifact of journalism. I don't think it is anymore. I think the basic artifact of good journalism now is an insight. And how do we make that insight travel through these fragmented and broken systems that are full of sewage? So essentially, I think like part of the answer, I promise answer your question. We've been thinking very hard about like, how do you create like the samizdat for the age of AI? Like, what does that look like? How do you make sure that like real food for thought that helps people navigate the world still gets to people who need it? So one of the things, I also am a big believer that we cannot, like, journalism industry cannot do it alone anymore. I think we need radical collaboration across industries that are threatened by the rise of technology and like kind of general flattening on the world. So we've been experimenting a lot with various collaborations. One of the collaborations is with a South African newsroom called The Continent. So we've been working very closely together, essentially embedded in each other's newsrooms, because they have a really interesting distribution system that really focuses on one-to-one distribution. So yes, we are, after like months of trying to figure it out, we are going to be launching a new publication that really focuses on distribution that's one-to-one.
So I'll let know that The Continent is known in Africa for making a WhatsApp publication. So literally it's a nice PDF, very nice PDF, which is sent around and which is very comfortable to read, but it's not like on elsewhere. I just want to bring it as one of the examples how creative the solutions could be. But we can take your questions, so please raise your hands. Julia? And then also give me the sign, how many of you, yeah, I see.
Yeah, one. Yeah. Thanks a lot for your discussion, presentation. My name is Yulia Dukachay, disinformation investigator from Open Minds, and I actually investigated a lot for coordinated and authentic behavior. And right now in Ukraine, we face this situation when AI empowered different actors to scale bot techniques endlessly. And it means that right now our public discussion online is dying, obviously, on almost all platforms. For me, it looks like that platforms like X or Facebook, which are based on this online discussion, they will not survive in long term if they will not change somehow. And I do not believe that our internet will become more personalized, that we need to tell everyone that I am a human and please let me write something on the platform. I do not believe in the death of anonymous internet. But does it mean that our public discussion online is going to the dead end? Or what do you see is our nearest future?
Yes, in my opinion, it does mean that public discussion online, which was really never that good quality, is going to be dead.
But should we try to save it somehow? Should it be somehow like one of the challenges for media to save our communities, which is not always offline?
So I believe that you will mostly be wasting your time, given that the business models of all platforms that we use are built around promoting lies or like really sensational, basically outrage. So I think, and I'm not saying like anyone should get off platforms or anything like that, but I think putting resources into creating another platform or promoting it, I think it's a waste of time. I think we should be present there, but that's not where the public discourse will happen.
I'll continue, and please, if you have the questions raised, I saw, because I really, in this context, I really love the term by Samuel Woolley. It's the researcher, media researcher from Texas, Austin University, who used the term like fabricated consensus, which I loved a lot, meaning like, and that for me is a very deadly one, that like by creating this kind of cloud of idea, some people think like, oh, that is a mainstream idea, I'll stick to it. But you become to
kind
believe
of like
into
Soviet,
that.
like in the Soviet Union, isn't
Exactly.
it? I know.
I think like that mainly because everybody thinks this way, but initially it was not genuine. Where I do see the danger of it.
No, absolutely. It's like USSR did win the Cold War after all. Like the whole world is becoming that.
Yes, thank you. My name is Anton. I'm the editor of The Fix Media, a media magazine for media managers. I really like the point that the basic journalistic artifact right now is an insight rather than an article. But does that require publishing even more stuff on external platforms, on big tech platforms that don't belong to journalistic organizations? And how can we fit this point with media publishing more and getting audiences to their own and operated platforms?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think the answer is individual for each newsroom. I don't think there is like a prescription necessarily. But I think once you accept that the insight is the artifact rather than the article, that demotes the importance of the article and makes you think harder about like how do you distribute insight and whether like, well, maybe we can use bots to distribute insight. Like, how can we use the modern technology to get the insights of high quality journalism to people who need them? So, and I think technology does offer opportunities. And I think you are also right that X probably will not exist. We will interact differently. You know, give it another 10 years, we won't be staring on screens. It will be like in front of us. So, like, and I think it's really important to. That's why I think that the beginning of that conversation needs to be like, why are we doing what we are doing? What are we doing it for? And what's like that main artifact tool is?
I don't see the hands, or I'm just, oh yeah, please, there and there. Yeah, I see now too.
I think that I will speak in French, if possible.
Is anybody able to translate from French to English here?
Thank
You have somebody, yeah? Okay, okay, we'll do that.
Moi, c'est Omar Amar, je suis journaliste, je viens du Sénégal. Je suis en Ukraine depuis quelques jours. Magnifique.
Natalia live in Senegal. Natalia live in Senegal.
Voilà, donc tu connais les champions d'Afrique. Hein?
Oui.
Voilà, en fait, moi je suis en Ukraine depuis quelques jours. Au début, en tant que journaliste, j'ai eu l'opportunité de venir pour voir réellement ce qui se passe sur le terrain, en vue de pouvoir, en tout cas, le reporter au public sénégalais ouest africain, où la guerre quand même en Ukraine est assez bien suivie. Et souvent, ce qui nous a frappé, c'est que souvent, quand on parle de cette guerre-là, il y a beaucoup de narratifs sur l'enrôlement de jeunes ouest-africains, de jeunes Africains aux côtés de l'armée russe. Ça, tous les médias en parlent. On le voit, c'est un sujet privilégié par les grands médias français notamment, parce que c'est les médias que je lis le plus. Et quand je suis venu ici, en discutant avec les autorités ukrainiennes, on se rend compte qu'aux côtés de l'armée russe, il n'y a pas que des Africains. Il y a toutes les nationalités. Il y a des Asiatiques, il y a des Européens, des citoyens de l'Union européenne. Mais pourquoi les médias ne s'intéressent qu'à l'enrôlement des Africains auprès de l'armée russe? Comment vous, en tant que journaliste, vous percevez cette différence de traitement entre l'Africain qui est engagé aux côtés de l'armée russe pour de l'argent et l'Européen, le Français par exemple, ou le Britannique qui va se battre aux côtés de l'armée russe pour que ça soit de l'argent ou de l'idéologie? J'aimerais bien entendre votre appréciation sur cette question-là, parce que moi j'ai constaté que cela a beaucoup contribué à nourrir la
We will
haine.
ask to translate to English.
Yeah, let's ask
Please
for
do.
translation. And all.
So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm a journalist from Senegal. I'm here with the delegation of my colleagues. And actually, we came to see how is it going in Ukraine due to all this situation, to see the reality. We've been in Kyiv, we spoke to the authorities, and now we are in Lviv having this visit, being here. And we want to report in our countries what is happening in reality. Not just what we see in our media or news or anything else, just the reality. And we spoke the other day in Kyiv with your authorities, and the subject which is really very discussed here is the participation of African young people in the Russian-Ukrainian war, but Russian side. So really, I'm impressed because in our countries in Africa, we normally see a lot of this information. Normally, those are French media who are discussing those subjects, and it is underlined that African people go to this war for money. But in reality, we spoke to your authorities in Kyiv, and it is 9% only of all the foreign people of Africans who are participating in this war. But there are Europeans, there are Asians, and a lot of other nationalities. So how could you, as journalists, explain, let's say, this different perception by European people and medias of participation of people of different nationalities in this war, and why Africans are underlined, their participation is underlined like
why they're getting more attention than the others. You know, I think we could have a separate panel on this, and then I have so many thoughts. And Natalia and I were in Nairobi together, meeting with African journalists. I'm so happy. I'm always happy to see anyone from Senegal, but I'm very happy to see you in Ukraine. I think it's really important for journalists to come and report here. And I think it's important because it's also part of the answer to the question. I think we talk to each other through our old colonial masters. The mass media and the legacy media is built on old colonial models, and we still operate in that mode. And I think it's a big part of the answer why, the African, it's an easy story that sticks, and much of the world is also racist. So I think it's the combination of these three things.
I'm sorry to say, I probably, because I work on this story, and I want, unfortunately, a bit to challenge you. I do think it's because nobody really cared. Nobody cares globally about this story to extent, so Ukraine wants to target it. So at least okay, nobody cares about the fact that there are Africans fighting in Ukraine. So maybe let's reach out at least to some newsroom in Africa, in Nairobi, or in Abuja, or in Johannesburg. So maybe they would be at least interested in this story. The same is happening with Latin America. So for instance, Colombian are serving a lot in large numbers, and Ukrainians sometimes coming to Latin American journalists saying are you interested in the story about Colombians fighting in Ukraine? And Brazilians would say, no, we don't care, it's Colombia. If that would be Brazil, we maybe would care. So I think it's not really, I think you are disproportionately targeted because you're coming from the African continent. So people want to find some kind of understanding that maybe you will pick up this story. I know that for many, many years, Ukrainian authorities are trying to push this story, but it doesn't travel well. It just like people are not interested. Like they see one Cuban soldier, and because it's Cuban, and there are no independent Cuban media, you can't find anybody publish the story about Cubans fighting in Russia because it's not interesting to anybody. So that would be my take working on this story for a couple of years. Sorry. There was a question here. The gentleman in the center.
Hi, Leon Ernhorst. I'm a disinfo analyst from Germany, and I want to maybe add something to Julia's question. So we all know that those bot armies are used by anti-democratic actors, and the quality of the content therefore diminishes on the platforms. Pro-democratic actors will definitely do the same. I know that they already started. So if you take that and try to see some years in the future, doesn't that mean that we might go into a direction that becomes a bit more analog and not digital?
Yes, we will. Yes, the answer is I believe so, because the platforms are not built for pro-democratic voices, so the algorithm is just not really built for them. So unless that changes, we're going to have to get off to have the conversation elsewhere.
I should say, I do believe, show me if there is a question. I do believe in the print publication more than I used to be. I think that I just outside of this room, I've seen the print paper of the Mazhivsky Meridian. I know about this paper because, you know, our organization, PAGL, sometimes provide like stipends for small media. I'm like, I want to read it. I really want to read this paper because it's paper. I won't go to the online paper of the Mazhivsky Meridian, probably. But I just want to keep it. So I do think it's our future. Yes, there is a question. Okay, please.
Thank you. Hello, Natalia. Taras Yatsenko. I run a local media in Lviv and Kyiv, Tvoye Misto. And I would like to get back to the topic of the main topic, the main title of your panel. So you say that we can't forecast what will be with the platforms, and definitely they will be changed in years in the future. At the same time, you say that the main artifact has changed in journalism to insight. But I think the first thing that makes us then think further about the distribution is what is journalism for? Do you think how do you think how it will change in the following years? Because today still it seems that journalism is a main pillar of democracy because it makes people do informed decisions. But what if democracy disappears, or at least goes to strong decline in the further years, and we have these threats? What will with journalism? How will reshape it?
Yeah, it's a really great question, and thank you for asking it. I think about it a lot, and I am optimistic about the future of journalism because, you know, we're not the world's second oldest profession for nothing, right? Those who are laughing know that the first is sex work prostitutes. I think the demand for us will not change, but the demand for what we provide will change. And the question about the demand, like what needs to bring us back to the basic question: what are we for? And I think like we are basically, like I sort of semi-answered it. Like I kind of think we're there to like help people navigate, right? Like there was a very linear kind of investigative journalism had a very linear, you know, you investigate, you publish, and your job is done, right? Like, and then constantly, and that doesn't work anymore. That has been broken because the politicians are shameless and like everything goes, you know, like the behavior has changed. So then what are we doing? And if we continue going deeper and deeper into the world of individual realities, right, that can be targeted with very individualized propaganda, then what are we for? Like, what are we doing? And the reason why I am like optimistic, besides the fact that, you know, we've survived for a long time. We'll just need to find new business models and ways of practicing. I think we're actually really well equipped. Like our skill set is really good for this era, because, you know, I was trained in the BBC. I didn't study journalism. I just started practicing it. And what was drilled into me as the BBC journalist was that somebody's terrorist is always somebody else's freedom fighter. And that makes you like a translator of realities. And as we kind of dive deeper and deeper into our individualized realities, we will really need to, I think the role of journalists in connecting them, the importance of their role will grow. So I don't know if I like completely answered your question, but yeah, that is basically part. I can go on forever about this, but that's what I think.
We are wrapping up, but I also, because we are like wrapping up the forum itself, before I ask the final question regarding Ukraine, so be ready, I would be connected, it's not even a question. I just also want to express like a bit of, not a criticism, my skepticism on the approach, why we are so negative, including in Ukraine. You know, we're speaking about the crisis of media. I'm very critical of how, you know, of the state of the Ukrainian media in terms of the quality today, honestly should say. But we're also in the end living in the country at war where the media scandals and media investigation leads to the removal of the second most influential person in the country at war. It's quite remarkable. You know, like you cannot speak about the death of democracy or like, I don't know, gloomy things. It's kind of like, it's actually, you can praise. So to finalize, you traveled here, you made your way from New York. I know you always support Ukraine wherever in all the international, you know, events. You give a floor to Ukrainians. You think, you know, like you give time for us to use your platforms, and I give you a chance also to speak to the Ukrainians, maybe to make a wish, to make a warning, to make something, to finalize it, since you made this long way, so there would be more Ukrainians to hear you here.
You know, I wish I could tell you that I do that because, I mean, first, you know, I have a deep emotional attachment. I spend a lot of time here, like both during Maidan, but also post-Crimea, like in Crimea and covering the East in the first wave of the war. And obviously I have a personal attachment, but, you know, I also wish I could say that, oh, I, you know, do that because of my high values, but I have to support Ukraine. It's existential. My country is not going to exist if Ukraine doesn't exist. The values that allow me to be a journalist are not going to exist if Ukraine doesn't exist. So, I mean, I don't know how you guys do it. Like, you know, I come and I'm like, how is everyone still, last time I was here was 2 years ago and I haven't come for 2 years. You know, I'm just like, every time I'm blown away. I don't know how you do it. And I think I'm so grateful to you. And I think the world owes you a huge, huge debt. And I think if democracy has a future, I think that future is here. I don't see it anywhere else.
I want you to give a huge round of applause to Natalia, but also that those applause goes to all brave people of Georgia.